Hey everybody, happy Monday. My name is Minda Hartz and I am your host of Secure the Seat. I hope you had a great weekend. Let us know in the chat how your weekend was. If you are in Louisiana, you are definitely in our thoughts and prayers, and please, let us know if we can be helpful in any way. Always a pleasure to be with you on Mondays at noon, because you could be anywhere on the internet or outside and you make it here for our show. So I'm so happy that you're here. I had a good weekend. I got to spend some time with my aunts and my grandmother and spoiled them. They came and stayed the weekend with me, and that was a lot of fun. I even got my grandmother to get into the hot tub, so that was a lot of fun. So I definitely had a good weekend. Very thankful for those moments to be able to spend with my grandmother and aunts, and then getting a chance to spend some time with you. Couple things before we get into today's show. Make sure that if you have any questions, you know the drill. Go ahead and drop those in the comments and we'll get to as many as we can. But as you can see on the lower, it's the lower right for me, right within, we're almost a month out. If you have not pre-ordered your copy, please do that. Pre-orders mean a lot. Whenever you see people talking about pre-orders, it's everything. Okay, that amount, all those pre-orders go into your first week of sales, and that's what dictates the lists and all those sorts of things and visibility. So if you haven't had that opportunity, please go ahead and cop right within, wherever you like to buy your books. We'll drop that in. Then also, if you've been talking about, I want to make sure my book gets out there, I am hosting my writer's retreat. You still have time to sign up for that. So we'll drop that in the link as well, in the comments. And so we want you to join the cohort that's going through the program now. I started it last year, just had so much requests to do it again. So now I do a hybrid of it. Last year it was live. This time it's live and pre-recorded. So if you have a book inside of you and you're curious on how to do that, I have I secured 3 book deals, so I know a little bit about putting books out there. So I want to make sure that I share that sauce with you as well. But today we are going to be talking about allyship, white male allyship in the workplace. I think it's really important for us to talk about how we bridge that gap as well. I know in my former life and even in my current life, I had a lot of good white men who did show up for me in the workplace and even in my current entrepreneurship journey. And so I appreciate the men in my life that show up of all races and ages. But I think it's important as women of color in the workplace, we talk about white male allyship. And someone who has been a great ally and friend for me is Mr. Mike Sipple Jr. And so I'm excited to bring him to the stage. He is a CEO, a president, a podcaster, a father, so many things, a son, just a really good person who's been so kind to me on my journey. And so without further ado, I'm going to bring up today's guest on the stage with us. So show Mike some love. Hey, Mike, how are you?
I'm wonderful, Minda. Thank you so much for having me, and for all of you tuning in. Thank you for being a part of this conversation.
Yes. Mike, for those who may not be familiar with your work, please tell everybody a little bit more about you.
Sure. So I've spent the last 21 years in the executive search industry. I'm currently the president of Centennial, a boutique executive search firm that focuses on succession planning and next generation leadership teams. 4.5 years ago, my father and I co-founded an organization with the support of the leadership team from our search firm. And that organization is called Talent Magnet Institute, that now 4.5 years later has its own professional leadership team, has big goals and visions to build a community of leaders who know that holistic leadership is most important, that success isn't just determined by work. So that's what we do. I run these 2 organizations. First and foremost, though, I'm a husband to my wife, Amber, and we've been together since high school, and we have 3 amazing kids, very active, 14, 11, and 10, that are this year, Minda, this is the first year, they're all 3 at different schools. So we're going through what that means for our pre and post work life.
Yes, I send you thoughts and prayers on that one. Mike, I know that a lot of moving parts with that. And so we're going to drop your links in the chat so that people can connect and find out more about the work that you're doing. And also you have a great resources there that people can take that journey on your website. So make sure that you go ahead and check what Mike's doing and his team at Centennial. We're going to get into it today. We're going to talk about allyship. And I have to say this before we jump into our conversation is that when my book, The Memo, came out 2 years ago, Mike, he sent me a message and he's like, I heard you're going to be in the area. I'd love to host you. I'd love to share my network with you. And I mean, he set up this phenomenal visit for me and I got to meet so many great people. I got to talk about the book and I was funny because I didn't know Mike and I'm like, is this real? I was Googling him too, I was like, who is this guy? And it was legit. And it was such a great experience. And I'm just so thankful for your support. I've also been on your podcast, so we'll drop that link in the chat as well. But I just want to say thank you for being a success partner on my journey. And it leads me to my first question. Can you think of a time when you realized that you had to shift your allyship into action, that it wasn't just enough to call yourself that?
Yeah. So, Minda, thank you. I think a big part of what you just referenced that, can you really be an ally if you're not active? Right. So if you're not putting your feet to movement and putting your heart to movement, I don't think we can consider ourselves allies. You can have an opinion and wish things were different, but if you're going to use the word allyship and success partner, that means you're doing something about it. So I would say it really, for me, the most unique experience was when I became president of my company. When I recognize the fact that everything I do, not just what I say, is being watched and paid attention to, right? So when you're in roles of any leadership, people are watching not what you say, but what you do. So we can talk a big game. We can share things that we wish were different. But if you're allowing microaggressions, if you're allowing again, being in the executive search industry, the greatest one is hearing companies that say, I want to have a diverse and inclusive teams, right? But if you're not creating action and creating change and bringing individuals of color into the forefront and promoting leaders into leadership positions, you're never going to break the cycle. So in my everyday work in leadership development, which we do at Talent Magnet Institute, and executive search, which we do at Centennial, everything I do and how my teams operate and how I show up at meetings, people are watching. And I profess this, I sit on the African American Chamber of Commerce here in Cincinnati. I've been very outspoken and will always be on things that I believe are important that we as corporate cultures and teams and leaders need to take seriously. And, when I was promoted into that position, I realized more than ever, people are watching you and you're a representation of not just your work, but your family and who you stand for, as a human. So that's kind of the moment in time where it really got highlighted for me.
I love that so much. And I have to get my tambourine out because you said a lot of tambourine moments there. And I think the main thing is you cannot call yourself an ally if you're sitting around letting people be macro aggressed. You're seeing the inequalities take place and you turn a blind eye to that. And I'm glad that you said that, Mike, because I think there's too many people calling themselves allies without any action.
And it's never been easier to do, right? It's never been easier to say something and not show up, right? So we need to be extra careful because now is a time that we're invited to the table. We're invited to challenge what has been, to change the future for all with the experiences that we're all living through right now. So my call to action is, if not now, when? Right? And then you can say just a follow on, if not you, who? is going to do this. If you haven't taken action now and put your foot into a situation that said, guys and ladies, that is not okay. Or I know we say that, but how are we actually measuring that and determining that we are successful? And I know we say we want to change this, but what are we doing about it? Right? Just because we brought someone in to share some words of wisdom with us doesn't mean that we're going to be enlightened and all of a sudden things are going to change. We have to move ourselves to action.
Absolutely. Well said. And I think, like you said, listen, we're saying we want your allyship, right? We want you to show up in the workplace. We want you, so when people say, oh, I don't want to get involved, I don't want to start any trouble, the trouble has already been started. So get in there and be a good active ally. The other question I wanted to ask you, Mike, is that I know that there are some well-intentioned people out there they're thinking I'm one of the good ones, right? And they might make a mistake. They might have not shown up in the meetings, virtual or in person. They've let things, slide in meetings and different things like that. So there's some women of color that might work with them and say, you know what, I don't trust Bob. I don't trust Steve anymore. And rightfully so, right? So what advice would you give to our, white men watching or anyone who wants to be a better ally on how to now show up? Since you haven't been showing up, what tips can they do to rebuild that trust?
Absolutely. So the comment you just made about the problem and challenge already exist is because we haven't shown up, because we've been complacent, because we haven't taken a broad look that said, you know what, that does impact me, even though it's happening to someone else. So, kind of my call to action is enough about not doing anything. And how you take the first step is to ask for forgiveness, to share, here's what I've been enlightened by. Here's something that really stings every time I hear it. Every time I see this happen, it hurts, but yet I don't do anything about it. Accept the responsibility for what has been. Accept the responsibility for what has been. Ask for forgiveness and ask the question, is there anything in particular I can do when this takes place? Or make a declaration, next time or right now, I'm going to go walk down the hall and have this discussion and say, this is not okay. The behavior is over. The game is changing. And be so bold to say, and if you don't change, here's what's going to take place, especially if it's a direct report for you. You have the authority and the action to call this onto the floor and deal with the situation. But I think first, it always starts with accepting and sharing, here's what took place and here's where I was wrong. Would you please forgive me? And I will not allow that behavior. In fact, I'm going to go navigate the behaviors that I've allowed and start having these conversations. So good leadership, what we don't want is people to paint a picture of the way we are as a leader and see all of these areas where we're allowing non-acceptable behavior to take place. So leader, whoever you are, whether you have direct reports or not, you're a leader if you're in the workplace. You're a leader if you're a human and have anyone watching you. And we have to accept that we've made mistakes and that there are things that we're no longer going to allow in the workplace. And if you've done something directly, again, apologize for it and say, I didn't know until my eyes have recently been awakened that this is an aggression, that this is something I should stop doing. It's a habit. Will you please call me out on it next time it takes place so I can be reminded that this is when this takes, because, unfortunately, a lot of microaggressions have been so accepted and macroaggressions in the workplace that we just go about our day throwing them out. Right. And we've got to align ourselves with the fact that things we do, whether it's unintentional or intentional, need to be called out by our team. So give people their permission and then go around and make some apologies for what has taken place and make a stronger declaration that you're going to take action in the moments.
I love that so much because I think we have to normalize the behavior of being able to say and call someone out, right? So I love that you're saying, hey, when I have said something, or if I do say something, giving you the permission to say, you know what, come to me and let me know, right? Because I think oftentimes people get so defensive, that's not what I meant, but two things can be true at the same time. You might not have meant harm, but it still caused harm, right? So what are we doing to rectify the harm? So I think if we can just make sure that we're keeping, it's about no longer accepting workplace harm, right? And that's the goal. That's the goal of allies, to make sure that we're diffusing this toxic behavior. So I thank you for that, Mike. I have a question here that I want to take from the comments. What steps can companies begin to take? What steps can companies begin to take from a strategic planning and implementation process of change? Great question.
Yeah, that is a great question. Thank you for asking it. I think for me, it's again a tying results and actions. What do we say when we say these things are our values? These things are our goals and objectives. What metrics are we going to tie to it? And are we thinking about it through the lens of not ourselves, but of others? Right. So as you're talking about strategic planning and implementation of process of change, we have to set expectations and be very bold and declarative in those expectations. So as we're thinking through, again, hey, we're going to add, we want to add, let's just say it, DEIMB into our strategic planning process. My argument with that when I sit in companies meetings that say that is that isn't that topic, it's really core values, right? That's not an action. We can hold ourselves accountable to make sure we show up with our core value, but don't think, well, we're going to do this quarterly, right? We need to be talking about things as a core value, because as we change our hearts, so go our actions and our words. So really think about, even in the strategic planning process, backing up a little bit and checking your mission, vision, and values. And also looking at your own heart and saying, if I have the ability to influence the values in our company that we declare, I want diversity, equity, and inclusion and belonging to be a part of our core value, that everyone can bring their whole self and feel safe here. Then let's look at our strategic planning process that helps us achieve our goals and objectives and aligns to our core values. So that's the one thing I have a real hard time into, when people are throwing out an action that we're going to do this and it's going to cure all diversity, equity, and inclusion in our workplace. It's going to, rid ourselves of racist behaviors and microaggressions. And I always say, well, I want to come back to your actions, because your actions are a direct result of what you believe and what your values are. I think it's very interesting. Just in the last year, this thing called the platinum rule has been thrown around, right? And we talk for decades, we've been talking about the golden rule: treat yourselves as you would like to be treated. Why has it taken us so long to recognize that I should treat you and everyone watching this live as you, or all of you watching, want to be treated, right? That's the platinum rule, to treat others as they would want to be treated. That should not be profound. That should be something that we show up with each and every day. But yet when I bring it up in speaking engagements, people are like, it's the first time I've ever heard of it. I've now been doing a poll. Who's the first, have you ever heard of the platinum rule? No, so few hands get raised. It's so interesting. So again, check with your mission, vision, and values first. Evaluate your actions, because your actions show a direct deposit of what you believe in your heart.
Absolutely. I love that. And yes, treat people the way they want to be treated. And I think in order to do that, you have to build relationships with people. And you lead me to a great, my final question here before we get into our bonus round is, what advice do you have for our leaders and our managers on how to create a culture of allyship, right? So if the culture isn't there right now, you can't just clap your hands, spin around, and it just, now we have the culture, right? It's changed. So talk to us how we create that if it's not there right now.
Yeah, so I do believe that so much in this world starts with conversation. and starts with us showing up in the recognition that what we're about to hear we may not agree with everything we're about to hear, but we need to start with a conversation. So whether that's small discussions throughout your organization where you're inviting feedback, and not just sending a survey. I mean, actually sitting down with small groups. If I'm the CEO and president, or a vice president, or a director, or a manager that has direct reports, I want to open up the dialogue to say, you know what? You can blame Minda and I. You can say I was watching the Secure the Seat LinkedIn Live, and it reminded me that we haven't had a conversation about some of these topics recently. We want to come back to the table. We want to come back to all of your perspectives matter. And I just want to hear what's going on, what's taking place, and open up with a conversation. I do believe that active listening and having conversations where you're not putting your agenda first can change lives and can create environments where people feel safe. You know, we like to say, Mend, at the Talent Magnet Institute, that we're trying to help individuals lead in a manner that helps people feel valued, heard, and understood. And if we show up every day with the recognition that I want to show up into conversation so that people feel valued, heard, and understood, I believe it can only transform cultures, but it can change lives. So I would encourage you to start there. And again, I always like to say you can always use something like this as a reason why, right? You know, blame us for the reason why that conversation happened this week in your workplace. And I would also invite you to share with Minda and I afterwards how it went and how uncomfortable at times you may have been, but how powerful an experience like that can be for you and those around you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that the chat is really resonating with the advice and things that you're saying, Mike. Yes, even I see Heather. Yes, everybody's been surveyed to death. Now it's definitely time to have those real conversations. And that's where, you know, I'm glad you said that, Mike, because that's where the real magic happens. That's where we can actually hear from people, right? And again, you know, I talk about courageous listening. It takes a lot of courage for somebody to come to you and say, this is a pain point for me, right? This is causing me harm. So have that same courage to listen to what somebody is telling you, because they're only telling you that so that we can get down to what the issue is, so we can find a resolution, right? And so, like Aaliyah said, we need a resolution, and that's the only way we're going to get there is through conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. And it also allows you to understand. It allows me to see things that take place that I may never even I may not understand because I haven't gone through those experiences. But by hearing your experiences, I can listen and I can respect and bring value to the fact that you've experienced that. I know something that, you know, we've done prior to COVID. Unfortunately, we've not been able to get them back into action, but just as a community, hosting courageous conversations and sending out open invitation for whomever would like to attend. And I can share from being a host a couple of times and attending several, everyone learned something. Everyone gained additional thoughts and perspective about life, and about also people that we walk life with, that we just have never had those dialogues. So I too agree that we've surveyed too much, that people quite honestly don't even trust surveys anymore, because most employers that do them have no intention or action plan of taking action from what's given. And the best place to start is the human heart, and courageous conversations is the only thing that gets us there.
Absolutely. Humanizing each other. I love it. Want to say real quick, well, shout out to everybody in the chat. Thank you. And those watching on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, shout outs to all of you. If you have any final questions, please put them in. But we're all leaders, as I believe in that. And Mike said it too, that, you know, we all have the capacity to lead. And so, I have to start with this question first, and then we're going to go into my rap lyrics. But because we're talking about leadership, and I have to start here. What's one piece of advice you would give all of our leaders watching on how to make the workplace better than they found it?
Yeah, it's a great question. Again, our strong belief is that creating cultures where people feel valued, heard, and understood changes lives. So we've gone so far, Minda, we're just releasing our first completely open course because we also believe that leadership development, unfortunately, has become exclusive, not inclusive. So we're rolling out a complete certification process for free that people can go and experience. I think that one of the things that people can take to make the workplace is ask questions and listen to people. So we tell people often, we actually give discussion cards to many of our members, and just say, use these few questions to ask your team throughout the week. And I always challenge people, hey, if you do this consistently over the next 2 to 3 weeks, and I ask your team, what's it been like to work in your environment? I guarantee you they're going to say something to the effect of, I've really enjoyed the last few weeks. I've never felt so close to my coworkers. I've never felt that people cared. And they may not even know why, but it's because you're dripping the conversation and the questions that matter. And you're recognizing that the workplace, in order for me to help you bring out your greatest good, I have to know what you want to achieve and what your potential is. And it doesn't always have to be about work to get incredible performance, right? So I help you to achieve your goals and objectives. The workplace all of a sudden seemingly gets a little easier. And I help you feel valued, cared for, and understood. And then all of a sudden, the workplace, we accomplished a little more this quarter than we did the previous quarter. So have the conversations, ask great questions, and then listen.
Yes, drip, drip, drip. I love it. I love it. Great advice. We all can implement that and ask better questions and listen. I love it. And, all of this is really that human connection, right? Humanizing each other's experiences. And if we do just ask these questions, they seem very simple to some people, but it goes a long way. I mean, when's the last time your manager asked you how you were really doing? You know what I'm saying? So,
it's crazy.
these are important things. I have to ask you now, as a lover of grits and rap lyrics, how do you eat grits, Mike? First off, we got to start there.
I actually love grits. So anyone who knows me knows that I love shrimp and grits. If it's on any menu, that's what I'm ordering.
Oh, my man, I knew I liked you for a reason. I'm glad that that's how you like your grits, and good grits go good with a good rap lyric. So what's one of your favorite rap lyrics and why, Mike?
Yeah, so I'm going to share, Minda, you shared earlier that you and I have been on a podcast together on our podcast. In fact, we're going to have an episode later this month with Minda on our podcast. So tune in for that. But I went deep for this one. So our beats at the Talent Magnet Institute, the lead-in for our podcast, is produced by a gentleman by the name of DJ Corbett, who's also a Grammy Award winner for Best Rap Performance for his production of Racks in the Middle with Nipsey Hussle. So my quote today is from Nipsey Hussle. Luck is just being prepared all the time so that when the doors open, you're ready.
Yes, Nipsey for the win. I love that. And why does that resonate with you? I mean, I can take a wild guess, but I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, so I believe that luck just isn't happenstance, right? That people who are deemed lucky work really hard to be in the right position at all times. And sometimes things come your way, but it's not lack of preparation. Right. So, to say you're lucky, I always tell people, no, you've just worked really hard to earn that spot. And I believe that quote really ties into that we have to work really hard to earn the spot, to be honored by a leader like you and a friend to invite me onto this podcast is not by luck. It's by showing up and doing the things that I'm passionate about that you invited me to join you. So the great Nipsey Hussle dropped many of lines that I enjoy. But that one is certainly one of my favorites.
Yes, that's such a great lyric going into the week. Everybody go check out Nipsey Hussle. There's a lot of good inspiration in his music. We love that. We're going to drop your links inside the chat so that people can find you and support your work and stay connected to your podcast as well. Listen, everybody, I know that we're all navigating through the pandemic that's still here. There's a lot going on, but we can all just remember to be a little more courageous listeners, bring about those conversations, those courageous conversations that need to happen. And if you have not been an active ally, today is a great day to start. So we want you to make sure that we do that. Mike, any final thoughts for our viewers as they go into the rest of the week?
Yeah, I just encourage everyone to continue to lead boldly, right? You're showing up on conversations like this because you care and because you want to see action. So continue to lead boldly. I would love to connect with you. So feel free to send me an invite on any social platform that you enjoy. Hopefully I'm on many of them. And then I do invite you to tune in to the Talent Magnet Institute podcast. Later this month, we're going to have an episode with the great Minda Harts with myself and John Thurman, who's the host of the HR Social Hour. So I invite you to that, and I look forward to our next conversation.
I love it. Thank you so much, Mike. Thank you to all of you for just being engaged. Today was such a great conversation. Share this out with your managers, with your team, with your friends. Like Mike said, blame it on us, right? If we're not creating those conversations, share this with them. I know I often say, if there's something going on, place that book, send your manager a book, send them a podcast episode. Let us do the heavy lifting for you if we can. I also want to shout out a good friend, Jamie. If you've read the memo, I referenced the silver dollars. She is part of that, part of my crew. I'm part of my squad. I just thank you all for how you show up for each other, how you show up for yourself. Want to thank my colleague and brother, Mike Harts, behind the scenes, who helps this show roll. I couldn't do it without you, bro. So thank you so much. And you all just have a great week. Last link that we're going to drop in the chat is our Women of Color Equity Initiative. So if you're looking for opportunities there, make sure that you fill out a profile and stay connected. But sending you a lot of love, all of you. Be safe this week. Put yourself first. And do something that makes you smile today. We'll see you next Monday at noon. Well, no, we won't see you next Monday at noon because it's a holiday, but I will drop something special for you for those who might just need a little sample of something secure the seat wise. So we'll make sure we have something for you, but have a great week. Talk to you soon.